The main task of CLOCKstep is sending master MIDI clock, system real-time start or stop messages to control devices such as loopers, DAWs, and timed effects. I have CLOCKstep hooked up to an Electro-Harmonix 45,000 looper containing a loop that I've pre-recorded. Also in the MIDI chain is a sampler for driving an audio click track. Details of the metronome configuration will be covered in another video. When I press start on CLOCKstep, you'll see two things happening. The tempo lights on the 45,000 will sync up to the CLOCKstep tempo, and the audio starts as the play button lights up on the 45,000. Notice that the 45,000 is set for external clock mode. That's all that's needed to get the basic functionality working. Setting a MIDI channel is not important yet. It is important to know that MIDI Start doesn't have the same definition as play. What Start does is really up to the device receiving that message. For example, I'll prepare the 45,000 to record a new loop. You can see the record light is flashing. It's waiting for the start command to begin the recording. The takeaway is that how a device responds to these commands is implementation specific. Now let's take a look at the Q foot switch. This is for delayed start or stop. When you press it to send a start command, it'll count a defined number of bars and then automatically hit start for you. Start, stop, and Q have dedicated foot switches so that both options are always available. You're always free to cue a transport action or have it take effect immediately. Here's a different implementation using a singular sound Aeros. Between Aeros and CLOCKstep, there are many ways to set up your workflow. I have it set so CLOCKstep will cue the start command to begin recording in a new song. An added bonus is I've made the user switch toggle between putting the track in play mode and recording the next song part. The user switch and adding MIDI commands will be the topic of another video. Now let's look at the clock pulse switch. This allows you to run the MIDI clock without sending start or stop commands. What you've seen so far are those commands being coupled with the MIDI clock. I'll start the clock and let it run on its own. The clock is intrinsically tied to BPM, but it's also the driver behind the metronome and the higher level concepts of time signature and the ability to cue commands. Once the clock is started, you can still jump in with either start stop or the Q switch. You can also run the clock in tap tempo mode, which strips away all song conventions and just performs the task of sending out MIDI clock pulses, along with giving you switch-operated control of the tempo. This can be useful if you want to control the delay or modulation effect tempos instead of a looper. Now that there's an explanation for what the pulse, cue, and start-stop switches do, it's a good time to talk about a feature called Auto Clock Stop. Auto clock stop has been enabled the entire time so far, so that every stop command also stops the clock as well. But the stop command and the clock don't have to be linked. You can have it so that the clock, metronome, and beat counts continue after the stop command is sent. The last basic feature I want to show you is the ability to set the cue, start, and stop length. The default is 1 bar for each, but you can set it up to 4 bars for either. Pay close attention to the area just above the start-stop icons. There will be a countdown of the number of bars before a command occurs. You can also cancel a cued action simply by pressing the cue switch again. That's it for the basics. Stay tuned for other videos about the metronome, presets, global features, custom MIDI commands, syncing multiple devices, and MIDI in support.